Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar, which is focused on leading hybrid learning with G Suite. As people who are watching probably know, this is one of a series of webinars where we've been focusing on hybrid learning. So how do we manage learning when our learners are both in the classroom but also at home? So we know right now, particularly across the UK, we've got a range of situations with schools and students in bubbles. Some of them are in school, some of them at home. Sometimes you're teaching a lesson where half the class are in and half the class are out. And so in these series of webinars, we're trying to focus on how do we manage that and how can we use G Suite to help deliver hybrid learning. And so that's what we're focusing on across the series. Today's webinar is particularly focused on topics of interest for leadership. So in this webinar today, we're going to focus on some key questions that leadership may be asking, both looking at the quality of hybrid learning, the role that leadership plays in that, how we can monitor that through G Suite, how we can communicate and develop staff to really feel confident about hybrid learning. And so we're going to cover a range of common questions faced by senior leadership in today's webinar. As always, if you're watching live, feel free to ask a question in the chat. And at the end of the webinar today, we'll come and answer any questions people have got in the chat. But also don't forget, you can share the link to this webinar. So if you've got senior leadership that you're working with or other schools that you're supporting, you can share after today the video link, and it'll be on the Google for Education YouTube channel. So you can share this out for them to watch in their own time, maybe over Christmas. So now let's get in. I'm joined today by two wonderful trainers. So Laura White is with me and also Dan Fitzpatrick. So they're both going to be helping me answer these questions as we go through today's webinar. And up first, Laura's going to join me to focus on how do we know about the quality of hybrid learning? And often as I'm working with schools, they're focusing on this question because now we're starting to deliver more and more learning in this mixed environment. They're starting to question not only about how do we deliver hybrid, which we were really focused on in March, April, May time, which was just the physicality of how do we do this, but now how do we know what we're delivering online and in person and in hybrid mode is of a good quality for our students. So Laura's going to explore this with us. Hi, Laura.
Hi, Andy. Thanks for the introduction. Hello, everybody that's listening today or listening later in your synchronous or asynchronous modes. My name is Laura. I'm a Google certified trainer and innovator. And I'm also currently studying digital learning and studying student thinking and teacher development at the Institute of Education in London. So I'm coming at this today from a slightly more academic perspective in terms of thinking, as Andy said, about quality. When we're in leadership positions and when we're trying to ensure that what we're delivering the best possible thing that we can, it's important that we try to take that zoom out and look across the field and try and see what we can gather from what's working in other places and other ideas and apply them to our context. As Andy said, from March, the reality for many teachers, many schools, many leadership teams across the country was firefighting. People were just emergency teaching, getting through it any which way. And then we started to have a bit more perspective in terms of thinking about build back better. You know, when things get back to normal, what are we going to keep? What are we going to reject? What are we going to do? And from September, lots of schools have made huge strides in this area and were able to do things a bit more consistently. So I'm just going to share with you a couple of models, a couple of ways of thinking about digital learning that are very applicable to the hybrid scenario. The first of these is the TPACK model. So I know lots of people are already familiar with TPACK, but if you're not, I'm just going to explain it really, really simply today. I'm just going to spend a few minutes talking about it because it's a way of thinking about teaching in terms of understanding change and how much has changed in the profession in the last 20 years or so. So the TPACK model, it actually originates from the work of someone called Lee Shulman. In the 1980s, Shulman said, being a good teacher, it's not enough just to have your content knowledge. I think if I think back to my own childhood teaching, university teaching, many of my teachers at that level, they were experts in their subject, but they hadn't really gone through the same sort of training process that teachers today go through in terms of thinking about pedagogy. So Shulman was one of the first to say, we need to train teachers specifically with pedagogical knowledge to go alongside their content knowledge. And what Shulman says is that content knowledge interacts really, or can interact really productively with pedagogical knowledge. So Shulman proposes this PCK idea, this real sweet spot where we can see teachers who are experts in their content, who are also expert teachers, And this really beautiful interaction happens in the middle of that space. And that's what good teaching looks like. So in the 80s, 90s, that was good teaching if you had both of those things in place. Now, in 2006, there's a couple of academics, Punya Mishler and Matthew Kohler, they said, look, we need to acknowledge the reality of the changing field of education. People need technological knowledge as well now. It is no longer adequate to be a subject expert who's great at pedagogy. You need to understand technology, to have a deep understanding of technology, because if you don't, you can either use it unproductively when it doesn't serve learning, or you can reject it when it could serve learning. So that technological, that third field, Mishler and Kohler argue we need to have in place as well. And then where we had that lovely little sweet spot between pedagogy and content, we now have a potential third overlayer where we get real beautiful interaction between effective use of technology, brilliant pedagogy, and substantial content knowledge. So what we're looking for when we're looking at in this new hybrid scenario, if you imagine trying to observe a lesson or evaluate a lesson or give feedback on a lesson as a leadership team, or deliver training to your teachers in terms of what good teaching looks like, this is one model that you could potentially adapt to your context. One of the things that I really like about it is this idea that you can see in the model, it's bounded within a context, because aspects of good teaching are the same everywhere, but aspects of it are not. And then the hybrid situation is very context specific around what your students' needs are, what your teachers' skills are, etc. But as a teacher or as a leadership team, thinking about these three areas of knowledge that we all need to enable us to plan effective teaching, hybrid or otherwise, the argument is that we need all three of these. Now, I've got a link for you if you're a geek like me and you want to read more about this. The actual paper is available online. I'm going to pop that link in the chat for you in a second from LearnTech Library, and that will enable you to read all this whole paper and all the breakdown and all the different kinds of knowledge. But I personally think it's really good. I've got a definition of TPACK too on the slide, if we can go forward, Andy. TPACK is a comprehensive understanding of technological tools and how they can be integrated for the enhancement of learning in support of the curriculum. So what I think this does really, really nicely is it re-emphasises what many of us have been saying for a long time: pedagogy first, allied to technology if it's useful, if it accelerates or amplifies learning or saves teachers time, alongside content knowledge, and all three. If you're looking for good learning right now in the hybrid space, look at these three zones, look at what your teachers have and don't have and need. And as a leadership role, you might need to be thinking about ways to build their technological knowledge and skills. Fantastic. So that's TPACK. That's one model, which I think works really well. It's really well founded, lots of support for it in the evidence framework. An alternative framework you could look at, although the two are very complementary, and there's lovely papers where it shows them aligning, is a bit more widely known, the 4 C's of 21st century, the framework for 21st century learning. And there's a link coming out for you in the chat, which is a link to the OECD on 21st century skills. There's a lot of research done, and the aim being that we could identify skills. What skills do our students need? If we're leadership and we're looking at good learning and we want to see what good learning is, potentially it needs to be learning which embraces the need for students to be able to do the following things. And if the students can do those 4 things, critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, communication, they will be able to be kind of happy and productive and successful in the world. So there's a lovely framework there for the 4 C's. It's very well known, and it marries up really beautifully to lots of other models. It's a different way of thinking about it. I've also given you, just because I can't help myself and I have to give you lots and lots of ideas, I've also given you the Michael Fullan article. This is a sketch note by Sylvia Duckworth. If you don't follow Sylvia Duckworth, you should, of a paper by Michael Fullan which responds to the 4 C's and adds some ideas around well-being, citizenship and character education. So Michael Fullan says we need to take those 4 C's and add 2 other things to have happy and well-rounded individuals who can live in the world. So for me, if I was leadership going into a classroom, looking for good learning or wanting to train my staff, I would pick TPACK or the 6 Cs and look at how my teachers are able to do those things in this new hybrid environment, but also with an eye to the future and to what's coming next. So we're planning for them as they go forward. I'm going to hand you back to Andy in a minute, and he's going to talk to you. Oh, sorry, I'm going to hand you on to Dan. But when we speak to Andy a bit later, he's going to refer back to these 4 Cs as part of a way you can analyse what's happening for your students in G Suite. Thanks very much, Dan.
Thanks, Laura. It's great to be with you this afternoon as we're recording. My name is Dan Fitzpatrick. I'm a senior leader at a secondary school in the northeast of England, a Tanfield school. And I just want to, before we go into some of the tools, I just want to kind of build it on the back of what Laura's just been talking about in terms of those models, kind of bring it into the realm of what schools might already be doing. And a lot of the shift in school leadership, especially in recent years, has been kind of focusing on data-driven ways of leadership. So one of the ways that I'm familiar with, and I know a lot of school leaders out there also use this model, is the Leverage Leadership book. So if we could just move on to the next slide. So in this book, which comes from the States, that a lot of schools are picking up on, and if not using this fully, using different models of this, or using some of these levers. So in the book, it talks about different levers that leaders can pull in order to get the culture and to ultimately make students progress and close the gap in terms of achievement. So some of these levers you'd be really familiar with. And we have there, the first 4 are instructional levers, and then the last 3 there, so 5 through to 7, are cultural levers. And some of the tools that we're going to talk about in this webinar really link well with this. And I want to really emphasize that, because a lot of school leaders who use technology or not using technology and now find that their staff having to really get to grips with technology in a new way, are asking questions of, well, how does it fit into what we're already doing? How does it have that? Is there data behind it? Is progress, especially in the hybrid learning world that we find ourselves in now? And I think it's a really important question to ask. I know, and I think I've said this on one of the previous webinars, that when a lot of students and staff and schools were moving over to online learning back in the first lockdown, especially here in the UK, because starting at the end of March, just getting online and providing some provision was amazing for a lot of people. It was a huge hurdle and a massive achievement for a lot of teachers. However, now that we're having to use these tools more and more, and having to rely on them more and more, if we weren't already, we have to kind of get serious about it as well, especially as leaders, and think, well, how does it feed into what we're doing in terms of our data and improving outcomes for our students? And I think this, what I'm talking about here, is kind of just to give that reassurance that it fits really well in here. And I know Andy's going to come on and talk soon about in terms of displaying data and looking at analytics and how to use that data, which fits really well with kind of the first 4 levers here in Leverage Leadership. And we're also going to talk about some tools that are going to really help improve culture and move culture along within schools. I'm going to come on and talk about Google Currents, which I'm really excited about to get into. So just to kind of to give that reassurance for those school leaders who are new to technology and leadership when it comes to whole school hybrid learning and integrating that into policies, that it does fit nicely into here. And if you want to read more about that, you can see there that this is taken from Leverage Leadership, a practical guide to building exceptional schools by Paul Bambrick Santoyo. Okay, I think I'm going to hand over to Andy now.
Thanks, Dan. So I'm going to just dig into data a little bit now. And quite often when I'm working with schools, we get asked this is a big question, which is, well, how do I actually know what's going on? If there's all this learning taking place online, How do I know if people are using it? If we've implemented Google Classroom, how do we know if that's being used across the school? How can we track that? And there's lots of different ways and different tools we can use to get some of this data so we can make informed decisions. If we're making decisions about professional development or we're making decisions about the tools that are being used, we need to actually have an informed way of doing that. And so I'm going to dig into some of the different ways we can sort of track what's going on. And the first one, for people who aren't familiar, is the admin console itself. So Google for Education has an admin console, and I'm just, while this is while I'm talking, going to sign into mine. You have to log into it a lot. It's got a much higher level of security, and not everybody may have access to this. So I'll talk about some of the tools that maybe don't require this in a moment. But if I just sign into what is, in this case, just so everyone knows, a fake school. So this isn't a real school. It's a made-up example school for us to use. And I'll just bring it in and show you what the admin console's got in terms of data. So here we are in the home page of the admin console. And once we're on the home page, we can start to move in a bit and look at reports as a particular section. Now, reports tracks all our users coming into our system. And on this home page, just gives us an overview of that data. So as I said, this isn't a real school, so it's only got a small number of users. It's a training domain. But we can see here, you know, we've got 209 active users in the system. We get a little bit of information on the home page about the activity they're doing across Gmail, and we can see how much they're using Drive or how much they're using Meet or so on across the tools. So on this home page, we can get some overview data of just the usage, and obviously we're hoping to see the increasing like it is on these examples here. But then we can also go into particular tools. So for example, with Google Classroom, if we're really focused on Google Classroom, we can go in and see here, this is the number of active classes. So 14-day active classes means how many people have been active in the last 14 days in a particular classroom. And so here they are, my number's increasing. Now, obviously, as a senior leader, I would know how many classes I've got in my school. So when I was previously a senior leader in a school, I knew we had 1,220 roughly timetable classes that were taking place in our school. And I could therefore say, well, we should see a number therefore of active classes that's somewhere near that. And for various reasons, you know, over a Christmas break, the 14-day activities are going to decline. But, you know, in the middle of term, I should be seeing numbers around that. And so I can start to get an overview from just the data that's available in the admin console to get this overview of what's going on. Now, because some of you might say, well, I don't have access to an admin console. Is there other ways we can see some of the data? So this data can be exported out in a variety of different ways. And I'm not going to dig into the technicalities of doing that in this webinar right now. One of the ways of bringing that out is through Google Data Studio. And so Google Data Studio is a way that allows us to draw data from various sources to view that data on what I described as data dashboards. And lots of us who work in schools are familiar with lots of products that display graphs and charts and data for us to use. And we can do that with Data Studio. So I'll just open up one of the reports here. This might show no data at the moment because it's got to link the accounts together. But we can start to bring reports like this where maybe we're looking at the number of logins, the number of active classrooms, Drive activity, Google Meet activity. And again, we can start to share these reports with people. So whilst you might have a limited number of people who have access to the admin console, with Data Studio here, we've obviously got the big share button. And we can start to decide who's got access to see some of the data and some of the reports. So if you're working in a school and maybe you don't have admin console access, there is an option to go down that route and start to bring the data into something like Data Studio to see some of the data that the admin console is reporting. The other thing we can do with Data Studio is we can start to get smart. We can bring data from multiple sources together. And so we can pull in that data maybe about our number of active classes, but then maybe compare that to other data we've got within an MIS. And if you're using many of the cloud-based MIS, so tools like Arbor will also give live feeds into Data Studio. So we can start to compare and look at correlated data, look at whether maybe does our absences versus our students spending time online, how does that tie together? And it's that power of correlating that data together that helps us make some of these data decisions. And so that's the admin console. I'm just looking through that bit. And we have another tool that we also use within Google for Education to track the usage at certain points, and it's called the transformation reports. So the transformation reports, The education transformation reports are a particular focused look at a school's use of G Suite over a measured period of time. And so at various points during the year, super admin, so people with admin access, can come onto the transformation reports, and we'll put the link in the chat to this page. And they can go over to get started and they can sign in to the transformation report portal. And what this does over measured times of year is it's able to generate data and show you data about the usage of G Suite and the usage of Google across a variety of different metrics. And so there are certain transformation report windows, and it's telling me here when the next window is coming up in May, so at various points in the year. So if you miss one, you're going to have to wait until the next window. But once you've opted in, then the system will start to track your data within those windows and produce reports. And so we can see with this account here, we've got a report here from spring 2020, and we can go into the report. And again, this is only a test domain that we're running the report on, but we can start to see different areas of usage. So how many level 1 certificates have we got? We'll talk about certification later. How many level 2s? How much usage is there of G Suite? And then further down here in the report, we can start to see how that ties under certain key areas. So rather than looking at it tool by tool, we can start to look at how we tie in with vision and culture and professional development and so on into those areas. And as Laura mentioned earlier, we can also track under the 4 Cs. And so we can look at the different products that a school is using, and we can align those products to collaboration, communication, creativity, and critical thinking. So we can start to get a balance of measuring against the 4 Cs. And schools can choose where they think the different products align. So within collaboration at the moment, or within communication, you can see we've got Drive, Gmail, and Calendar as being key communication tools. For creativity at the moment, we've got Doc, Slides, Sites, and Drawings as being key creativity tools. So schools can choose where to put the different Google products within the 4 Cs, and then they can start to graph this report. So they can start to see what their usage is like against the 4 Cs. So if you want to really focus on those as areas, again, we can start to get metrics and get data on what we're seeing come through. And that's with the transformation reports. If you haven't opted into those already, you're going to have to wait until the next window to opt in. But I certainly recommend coming through to the page, and the link's in the chat, opting yourself in, and it will have to be a domain super admin that goes through the opt-in process so that you can start to track and get these measured data points in your journey. And of course, what you can then start to do is use that data to then decide how to plan what you're going to do as a school next, to then lead that development and develop your use of technology. And so those are just a couple of data areas, admin reports and transformation reports, that you can use within G Suite to start tracking your usage. Dan's going to come on next to talk about how we can communicate with staff.
Hello, yeah. So going back to so Andy's just taking us through like the data, and I'm going to go back to when I was looking at the leverage leadership levers. We're going to jump over into culture, into building culture, and obviously it's no easy task, but communication is a massive part of that, and being able to have an easy flow of communication and making sure that the right information gets to the right people. Now, it seems like, especially this term, more than ever, that email inboxes are going crazy. And email inboxes, the issue, there's nothing wrong with email inboxes, but the main issue is that it's very linear, and we've all worked in institutions, organizations, schools where we get too many people hitting the all staff reply, or just sending general emails out to everybody, and you have to sift through. I was looking at this the other day, and actually, if I really wanted to go through all of my emails properly at the end of the day, it would take over an hour if I really wanted to properly sift through it, and I'm really bad at it. So if anyone's watching this and has sent me an email and haven't replied for a few days, that's because I'm really, really bad at it. Because it's too linear, and at the end of the day, sifting through is difficult. Because not all the communication there is for me. Now, we could have a full conversation about how best to use email, and I think we probably should at some point, but not right now. But I want to introduce a tool to you which I think can help solve that and do a lot more, and that is Google Currents. Now, Google Currents is quite a new tool from Google, and is kind of the upgraded new face of Google Plus. So, and And I want to say, because we haven't delved into this in this webinar yet, and in any of the series, and I want to see and show you kind of how it can really help with communication within the organization. So let me just move on to the next slide here and show you some of the things that I think it can do really well. And the first thing is staff engagement, being able to keep the engagement of staff, whereas sometimes communication can do the opposite of that. Second thing, gather feedback from staff. Now, some forms of feedback, especially if you're sending an email out, is very difficult because you're just going to get reply after reply. You've got to sift through them, read them, whereas you can gather some feedback here in really efficient ways. Also, kind of linking to what I've already said, avoiding the overload of information and content so that staff across a whole school or college are able to access the information that they want and that they need. And then they don't have to sift through other information that's not necessarily for them. The overall arching theme of this is connecting ideas, content, and people, which is really exciting, I think, for a tool to be able to do all of that. It's something that really makes me sit up and want to listen and play with, really get and use it within my organization. We're also going to look at how it can be used as well to steer discussions from leadership and organized communication. So the first thing I want to look at is how ideas, content, and people can be connected using Google Currents. So we're going to go through how to share posts, content links, use hashtags and tags, use polls, and something called Spotlight as well. And if you're accessing this at a later time and you're accessing the slides on the website, you will be able to access this and go back and have a look. And just in the bottom right hand corner here, I've just put like a bit of a tip of how you could use this to help within a school context. Okay, so I'm going to jump over to Currents. Okay, this is what Currents looks like if you haven't used it. And essentially, think of Currents as your internal social media platform. Okay, so you've got Twitter out there, you've got Facebook out there. I think it's for me, it's a merge between Facebook and Twitter that sits within your school domain and is to help all of your staff share and communicate and connect. Okay, I think that's a really simple way to put it, but I think it's going to resonate with you, especially if you use social media, and you will pick it up really easily if you think of it as that as well. So, as you can see here, I'm just on the stream of all posts. So you can see here, there's some streams here that I've posted. It's mocked up, okay, so you can see some of the features. To post, I'm just going to go home, and I can post an update here, just like I would on a Twitter wall, for example. And if I click that, I can see that it's going to stay in my domain. I can give it a title. So let's say I was wanting to just give a nice message to the staff at a school at the end of term. So I might just put as the title, Merry Christmas. Thank you for all your efforts this term. And then, like I can on Twitter, I can add a hashtag, and you can see here when I click hashtag, it comes up with some suggestions of hashtags that have already been used. Okay, so I could choose some, and I've got a hashtag here for appreciations. Always good to, when on a platform like this, to be able to share appreciations to staff. So I'm going to put hashtag appreciations, and you can see at the bottom here that I've got various different options. I can change some of the formatting of the text. I can add a link. I can add something from Drive, and I can add an image. Those of you who use Google Classroom, this should be quite familiar because you get similar options when you're using Google Classroom. There's also a polls icon there, which I'm going to come on to soon. And then I can, because what you can do, and I'll show you how to do this in a second, is if you're a leader within the organization, you get this button at the top here, which says Spotlight. And if I click Spotlight, that means it's going to appear at the top of people's streams. So it's given priority. Okay, so if I'm going to click Spotlight, and then I'm going to post it. And there we go. It appears in the stream. And then everybody within my domain, so everybody at my organization, my school, will be able to see that. And because I have clicked the Spotlight button, it will get priority in their feeds. And not just people who are following me or following the hashtag appreciations will be able to see that. Okay, so let's go on to the tags, because if I click the tags on the left hand side, very much like Twitter, if you use Twitter, you can search for certain tags. So you can see here we've got some tags that have already been used, some hashtags, and you can follow certain ones. So if people at school are being encouraged, for example, to post CPD materials out on this platform, then hashtag CPD seems to me a really nice hashtag. So I can follow that. If I click follow, then anything that's related to CPD that's posted within my school, I can follow that if that's what I want to do. Hybrid learning, I might want to follow that one because I want some tips on hybrid learning and some best practice that's being shared around within this community of my school, communicating with each other using Google Currents. And then that means that because I'm following them, I am going to get notifications, and I am going to be able to find easily any messages that have been posted in Currents that have that hashtag in. And you can see at the top here, it's given me the popular list, so I can search what's popular within the organization, and I can also see what I'm following. And then if I click on that, it's going to bring up any of the posts that relate to CPD. And there's just one there because this isn't an actual school account, as I explained. Okay, so let me take you through to communities next. I think communities is a really nice feature to be able to group people together. And I've put some as an example here. So we've got learning support staff, senior leadership, and teachers. And it's a way for different groups within the school to be able to message each other within Currents. So if you go to the all posts, you're going to see what's posted for everybody throughout your institution. And all those various whether it doesn't matter what hashtag they've used, you're gonna see it, and it's a great way. Like Twitter, if you're like me and you're just like scrolling through Twitter and seeing what's new, picking up ideas, that's gonna work for you, the all post. But if it's specific to a group, it's gonna be within the communities section. And you can see here, if I just zoom in a little bit there, you can see that under the senior leadership one, it says private. Okay, what that means is that nobody else within the school can actually say that community even exists. So if you want to have a private communities for certain groups of people, then that's an option, and you might want to do that for your senior leadership as well. And then if you click on that, you've got the stream for that community. Really nice feature there to be able to have kind of more personalized stream and conversations and discussions between groups in the school. Okay, so if I go back home, and I'm going to go back over to our slides here, and I want to show you next how it could be effective for leaders in terms of feedback and discussion. Okay, so the first thing I want to show you is polling, then how comments can take place, likes, and then analytics as well. So I'm going to head back over to Currents and head over to home, and I'm going to click the new, so the plus sign in the bottom right hand corner. It's a new post, and I'm going to click just at the bottom here the poll icon. So if I click that, I can add a picture if I want to, and then I can add different choices. So if I want to, let's say there's a new policy from the school that I want teachers to be aware of. So let's do that, and please check out, need to learn how to type, please check out this new policy and let me know what you think using the poll and comments on this post. Okay, so then I'm going to add some choices. I love it. Don't think anyone's ever said I love it about a policy before, but there we go. I love it. It's okay. Needs more work. Okay, I'm going to click done, and then it gives those as an options underneath for the staff at the school to be able to click on. And let's just click post there, and you will be able to see it on the stream. And then staff can click on it. So if they love it, think it's great, they can click that, and then they can add a comment which says why. Okay, so a really nice way to gather feedback on something which I think sometimes staff or leaders might not gather feedback on a policy. So it kind of opens things up to discussions, which will allow a back and forth conversation and more of that collaborative feel for work as well, which I think is so important. And a great feature, a really great feature. Stick some hashtags in there, so if it's related to a certain area of the school or a certain area of the whole school strategy, hashtags will help there to get it to the right people as well, so the right people will be able to notice that. Some analytics that we can use on this. So because I created this post, in the bottom right here, underneath, just next to you, so you got the like icon there, like you would on a lot of social media. And just to the right, you've got an icon that looks like a graph. And if I click that, it's going to give me some analytics on this post. Now, obviously, there hasn't been much interaction because I've just posted it and there's only me in this current at the moment. But you get some really nice data there, which will show you how many people have interacted with it, how many have liked it, what the comments are like, and how many people have reshared it as well. So you can gain that insight into how well the communication is going, and then use that to inform that data to inform further communication. Okay. And the other really nice thread that I want to get onto in terms of Currents is steering the conversation. Now, Currents is an amazing platform for us to be able to have that collaborative community sharing. However, sometimes it's work, isn't it? And the leadership will want the conversation to go in a certain direction. They will want you to take notice of certain things that are happening, and will want you to take part in certain conversations that they would want you to take part in, just like any organization. So how can leaders steer the conversations that happen within Google Currents? Well, I'm going to take you through uploading tags, creating streams, communities I've already touched on, and leaders as well. So I'm going to head over back to Currents, and just on the left hand side here, if you are one of the leaders in your school, you will have access to management tools. Okay, and if you don't, you can ask the person who's in charge of your admin console to add you to that. And you can see here there are three main options just at the top. We've got tags, leaders, and streams. And we've got a list of the hashtags that have been used. But what I can do here is I can bulk upload some hashtags, because there's always that issue, isn't there? And it sometimes happens on Twitter when, so let's say, for example, someone posts something CPD related, so continued professional development, but then somebody else posts something which is related, but uses a different hashtag. They might use PD or professional development. As you can see here, there's two. So two have been used here, but you want everything that's for CPD to be within that hashtag so that it's very easy to search. So uploading tags will really help to steer the conversation and keep everybody on the same page in terms of being able to access the content. So I just click upload tags, and I need to create a text file, and I'll just show you how easily it's done. I'm going to upload that, and you can see there it's brought in a load of hashtags that I had in a text file. I'm going to click upload, and I am getting a problem. Okay, that wasn't anticipated. Sorry, there was a problem. Come back in a few minutes. Okay, I'll leave that there for a second. But when that's working, they will populate then the tags list here. And then when teachers or whoever in your school are writing posts, when they click the hashtag button like I did earlier, it's going to give them the suggestions. Okay, and it's going to prompt them. So a way to help you lead or steer that conversation. You can, I'm just like what happened to Andy, it's asking me to log in again, so I'm going to do that. just testament to the security features at Google, keeping our data and our platforms safe. So right, I'm on the leaders page now, and I can add leaders. So if I want to add my SLT as leaders in here, I can do that. And my Google Assistant on my phone is now trying to join the conversation. So I can add the leaders in my school. I could also, let's say I have, a lot of schools now do CPD streams. So if you've got a leader of a stream who would like to have the access to be able to put posts under a spotlight for certain people to see, or to see the analytics, then you can add them as leaders within that. And in terms of streams, you can create different streams here. So if I just click create stream, you can give it a name, a description, and you can add different groups. So groups within Google Groups can be added to that as well to help personalize discussions that can go on. So there you go. An amazing tool, which I absolutely love. And even myself, being totally honest, I'm scratching the surface still, and I can't wait to delve into this more and use it more with my school, because I think the potential that it's got to be able to create that culture of collaboration, of sharing content, of helping each other out, of gathering feedback and steering the conversation for leaders to be able to not only create that culture, but able to steer it as well. It's got amazing potential. So yeah, definitely want to delve into, if you haven't already, Google Currents. And I'm going to hand over now back to Andy.
Me and Laura coming in. Thanks, Dan, for taking us through Currents. It's great to see when you can get staff onto some of the other platforms, some of the real benefits of reducing the email that you'll see, because it becomes a place for communication and that sort of conversational piece. That's great to see, particularly as we think so much about student hybrid learning, but what about staff and their professional development as well. So Currents has some real potential in that space. Final sort of question as we go through this afternoon of questions, we're going to look at, so we've got the data, we've identified maybe some areas for development with our staff. What can we do to help our staff team develop? How do we build their capacity? And so me and Laura are going to answer this. Laura, we'll hand over to you first.
Thanks very much, Andy. Yeah, Dan, I think that's all fantastic, and thank you so much for the guided tour. I think there's a lot, as Andy was saying, really, I think the benefits of G Suite, the more components of it you use, the more streamlined everything becomes, and you can link and pull it all together. So I think definitely in terms of trying to streamline that process, make things simple and easy for teachers and leaders, Currents looks really worth investigating. Thanks for the tour. I wanted to talk about a couple of aspects of professional development for teachers. First of all, just to draw on some experiences that I had in my previous school all through last summer term. We used Google Meets extensively. And one of the things we did, I think that works really well, was about doing just-in-time training, just those little bits of regular training. So we did something called Tea Time Twilights. We did it every single day from 4:10 to 4:30, the end of our school day, and we ran it online, virtual environments. And what was the advantage of that for everybody was that it was a little tiny condensed piece of information, and it was accessible everywhere. Like we said at the very start of today, we're thinking about what we can hold on to from this interesting phase, and thinking about professional development as being a little bit of information on a regular basis that's accessible, whether people are at home with their children, whether they're at home with their families, whether they're still in the classroom. People can listen in on an audio basis if they're in the car. And it's a really flexible, versatile tool for delivering content. Particularly if you're looking at the new kind of features around breakout rooms and pollings and Q&A, those kind of aspects really do give you every facility you need to run a really interactive, engaging session for your staff and for your staff teams. So don't forget about Google Meets, just as a delivery mode for training. It's really versatile. I also want to give a shout out to the GEG groups. Actually, there's quite a few of you here today in the chat. Go GEG. If you have staff who are really keen to develop and you want somewhere to send them, the GEG groups are a fabulous way of joining a community, learning collaboratively with peers, having like a hive mind, place to ask questions and go to. And they put on regular events, and they live stream regular sessions. So a big shout out to those people. They do a fantastic job. There's much more formal content available, which Andy's going to take us through shortly. But I just wanted to share those two kind of examples from my perspective.
Thanks, Laura. Before I talk about the Teacher Centre, just a reminder, just after this section, we're going to do a Q&A. So if you've got any questions you want answering, now is a great time to get your questions in the chat. If you're watching live, feel free to jump in the chat and ask us some questions. But other ways of training staff. So we have something called the Google for Education Teacher Centre, which I'll show you in just a second. And it talks about some of these different levels of resources that are available on there if you're thinking about training staff. So I'm going to jump over on my screen to the Teacher Centre. And on the Teacher Centre top line here, the different areas, I've just come into training courses as the first area to look at. And if you are absolutely new to Google Tools, and so maybe you come as this first webinar to watch, down here on this page with the training courses is a very sort of first level that teachers can get involved with. Is this G Suite for Education quick video sent to your inbox course. And so it's a weekly course. You sign up with your email. Every day on a Tuesday, you get an email with some tips. It's a short video and some activities to do around each of the Google tools. So if you're just brand new, starting your journey, the Getting Started email course is a great starting place. But sitting above that then, we have the Learn the Basics of G Suite for Education. So that's an online course you can work your way through by pressing Start Training and working through that. And then if you've already done that, there's the Going Further course, which again are 2 online courses that are available to support you to develop your skills of using the range of G Suite tools. Also on this same page, down below that, come some focus courses. So you've got the one about distance learning. So again, that's focused now on this concept of distance learning and students not being in the classroom. So if you want to focus on that, there's 8 units of study on that area there. And below that, how do we engage and deepen the learning opportunities through creative distance learning? So if you think you've got your distance learning sorted, how do we now start to vary the tasks that our young people are doing, that our students are doing when we're delivering distance learning? And then that's what that module of training looks through.
Andy, can I jump in there for a sec?
Yeah.
I just say something that's really useful to know about the Teacher Centre is obviously if you're working in a school which has G Suite for Education, you can log into this with your Google account, or use a personal Google account if you're not, and you can save your progress. So for people who are really busy, really push for time, you can jump in, and this course says 3 hours 40 minutes, and so you might think, oh, I haven't got half a day to sit down, but you can just chunk it off in little sections. And that ability to progress at your own pace and time, I think, is really valuable for busy teachers.
And I was going to link in with that. One of the things to think about as a school, if your leadership, is how are we going to sort of accredit that? So one of the things in the last school I worked in was we could take that record from the Teacher Centre to see what people had done, and then we'd say, okay, you can count that towards your PD time. So if they had to do a certain number of hours, we used to have to do a certain number of hours to effectively have an inset day for shopping at Christmas. And so one way of accumulating hours was to do some work within the Teacher Centre and present that back to the school. So that's really useful. Sitting above that, so what we've just been talking about there are these courses on the left-hand side here, the Teacher Centre Fundamentals course, the Advanced course, and the Coaching course. They then lead to some certification. So two main levels of certification in the Teacher Centre, the Google Certified Educator Level 1 and the Google Certified Educator Level 2. And then sitting above that, the 3 high-level certifications, so trainer, coach, and innovator. And it would be great if in the chat, if we've got any trainers, coaches, or innovators, or maybe anyone who's all 3 in the chat, if they want to pop that in to talk about, to let us know which levels they maybe have. So if you've got level 1, level 2, trainer, coach, or innovator, let us know in the chat. So the level 1 is an exam, and it lives in the Teacher Centre. Under certifications here, and when a teacher feels they want to take the level 1 exam, they can come online, they can register on the page, and they can go in and take the exam. And it's a practical exam. You'd sign in and you complete tasks within G Suite, things like using Google Classroom, using Google Forms, using Gmail, to show your competency in using that. And the level 2 obviously is a more advanced level, but it's very similar in its format and delivery. As I said, sitting above that, then we have the 3 big programs. So the Certified Trainer program is for people who then want to move in the direction of becoming Google Certified Trainers and doing things like myself and Laura and Dan are doing today on a webinar, training other people, maybe training face-to-face within your school, delivering professional development for teachers. And that's what trainers do. They help other people develop their skills. And by becoming a certified trainer, you get access to that trainer community, that sharing of resources, and again, that connection with other people in similar situations. So that's the trainer program. We also have a program that sits very close to my heart, which is the Google Certified Innovator Program. And this is people who want to drive forward a change in education. And so they apply to that program with a challenge that they're facing. And they go through a 1-year program with mentorship to help them deliver that change. And so that's the Innovator Program. And then finally, down below that, the newest of the 3 programs is the Google Certified Coach Program. Laura, do you want to talk about this? Laura, you're on mute.
Yes, I'm on mute. I do want to talk about the Coach Program because I think Coach Program is epic. We've currently got our first cohort in the Coach Program, and they've just hit their halfway point today, which is really, really exciting. So the Coach Program, you can do it independently from the Teacher Centre. I think the other thing that's useful for leadership to know is that all of this content is completely free of charge. So you can upskill your teams and get them through these programs. But the Coach Program is about working one-to-one with teachers over an extended period of time. We started off today looking at models for learning, and the idea of working with people reflectively over a period of time to develop these skills and attitudes and approaches is really, there's so much evidence to support it as a working model. I'm really excited about the Coach Program, and I can't wait to see it grow. So that's something we're looking forward to developing more in the region.
Thank you, Laura. And that's the Coach Program. So those are the 3 high-level programs that are available within the Teacher Centre. So that gives you an overview, but obviously you're free to go to the Google for Education Teacher Centre and explore all of those resources in your own time. So we hope those are useful for people. We're reaching the end of our webinar now, and so time for some questions and Q&A. Before we even say thank you, it's time for Q&A. So I'm not sure if we've had any questions in the chat. Dan's going to rejoin us, and we'll just have a quick look through to see if we've had any questions that have come up in the chat. So there's one here for Dan.
Hi. Yes. So I've replied in the chat as well, but I'll just go over it again. Yes. So I think someone's posted there. You can link certain things to Gmail to get notifications. But what I like to do is just use the app. So if I've got the app on my device, then I can receive certain notifications, and I can change what I want notifications for. So I get a different list of, well, do I want notifications if I'm mentioned in a post? Do I get notifications if someone on my stream has posted? So that flexibility to be able to do that really helps. A bit like Google Classroom. I like that flexibility and be able to turn some notifications on, some notifications off, because again, you don't want that. I've just realised I'm hiding behind the comment there. I'll just lift my head a bit. You don't want to have like a barrage of notifications as well, because that's not going to be great for teacher workload at all. So yeah, getting on top of that is so vital, and the options are there in terms of what notifications you receive and what you don't.
But what I would highlight is it's you can bring notifications to Gmail if you want. So I know I get notifications from currents in Gmail, which is useful if you're focused on your emails.
Yeah.
And that question was, I think, around the Google for Education transformation reports. I think that's where that popped up as a comment. And so Google for Education transformation reports are available to all Google for Education users. It has to be the domain super admin that clicks through to set them up. But yeah, it's for Google for Education and Google for Education Enterprise. So both can use it. It's not an enterprise feature. So I hope that answers that question. Do you use this admin console thing? Who uses this admins? I've answered my own question. So the admin console is really is the technical back end of the Google for Education tools. Very often there's network managers in schools and IT support staff who would have access to the admin console. But one of the things I did very, very early on in my school's Google journey, and I at the time was a head of department, was I got access to the admin console. I think it's really important when it comes to admin in a school and the admin console, that decision is a joint decision that involves teaching and learning and the network people from the forms of security and what can be turned on. But I think it's really important to have that dialogue of, Dan would look at something like Google Currents and say, look at the amazing things we can do with this. Look what we can use this for. And so, you might have a really good case for why that wants that turned on for staff. And so I think having that parity where different people are using it is really useful.
Yeah, it might be worth saying there as well that you can have different level of access as well, can't you? So if you don't want staff, I know our IT department are really super careful about this, and so they should be. If they don't want staff to have access to some of the more data side of things in terms of the users and being able to, and all of that and how it links with our MIS, then you don't have to give access. You can just you can customize that, which I think is really, really helpful. To be able to bring people on board in terms of the admin console as well.
I hope that answers that question. I think that might be the end of our questions from today. So just really needs me to thank Laura and Dan for joining us today for today's webinar, and also Kiri behind the scenes for pressing all the buttons. And this is the end of the series. But don't forget, you can watch all of the webinars back, and we've shared the links out at canopy.click/hybrid. And I'll put that in the chat later. For anybody who wants to see any of the previous series of webinars. But a big thank you for joining us over this series. I hope everyone has a great festive season, and we'll hopefully see you all in the new year. See you all, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.